Good morning.
Good morning. We wanted to get a look at who would possibly come out on Friday the 13th in the teeth of an ice storm. Give yourselves a round of applause. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Biz 417 Magazine's first ever Think Summit, a new event unlike any other in 417 land.
Our Biz 417 team has created Think Summit to offer the local business community a chance to engage with the most forward-thinking and innovative people in our region to imagine a more compelling future for all of us.
Today you'll learn more about innovative and inspirational projects already underway in 417 land, and you're going to hear about new initiatives that are being unveiled for the very first time today.
Before we get started, I want to make sure we thank our sponsors. People-Centric Consulting Group is our presenting sponsor today. Our contributing sponsors, Atlas Security, Essential Strategies, Missouri State University College of Business, OTC Center for Workforce Development, Paperwise, Groom's Office Environments, and Simply Delicious Catering. Let's give them a round of applause.
We also want to thank the Springfield Art Museum for letting us take this space over today and turn it into a think tank, transform this space into a place where you can hear from the most innovative minds and the biggest thinkers in the area, and a place where you can connect with each other and get to meet the people that are attending here today.
So here's how the day works. If you haven't already, go to 417thinksummit.com, and that's where you can download our web app. You can save it to your home screen, and that will be your program today. Show you the speakers, the agenda, how the day's going to work. Today, everything, all of the programming, as far as the speakers go, is going to happen here in our people-centric think tank. And this is where, so the keynotes, the debates, the presentations, everything is here. We have 15 rapid-fire back-to-back presentations, 2 breaks, and lunch. So it's a fast day.
It is a fast day and a full day, but if you need a break and you need to leave the think tank, you can do that and stay plugged in at the people-centric Thinkubator. It's out in the lobby where you came in and registered, and they've got a place for you to engage there. You can also check your email in the MSU Interactive Lounge or kick back in the Atlas Security Interactive Living Room. You won't miss a thing because everything today is being live streamed in all of those areas, and our entire program is being live streamed on Facebook today. And you'll want to stay till the end where we warm up the day and wrap up the day at what we're calling Drink Summit with a cold beer from Mother's Brewing Company.
Paperwise is sponsoring our phone recharge station, so that's just right out here. You can charge your tablets. And there's a photo op at OTC Center for Workforce Development area. And Groom's Office Environments has created lots of great spots for conversation as well as the stage, so thank you to them. Today, filling your brain and your tummy, so the people filling your tummy is Simply Delicious Catering with great breakfast, snacks, and lunch all day.
I know you're going to hear some ideas today that you're going to keep to yourself for competitive reasons, but we hope that there are other ideas that you want to share. And there are lots of social platforms that today you can use the hashtag 417ThinkSummit. If you have your profile set to public, you will see your post streaming on the screens along the wall here in the think tank. To keep the day dynamic and flowing, instead of a Q&A with the speakers after each talk, we invite you to engage with the speakers in any of the conversation halls and ask as many questions as you would like following each talk.
So get ready for a dynamic day of hot topics, big ideas, and some of the most forward-thinking experts in our region. Welcome to Biz 417's Think Summit. The conversation starts now. Woo-hoo.
From the City of Springfield, City Manager Greg Burris and Assistant Director of Environmental Services, Aaron Kemper.
Thank you. Good morning. Aaron and I are here to start and set the bar low. So I've got $1, and let's say that as a person, you've got choices of what you might want to do with your $1. Now, you could go out and buy an ice scraper, or you could buy a cup of coffee, or you could buy a donut, or you could save it. So you have choices of what you want to do with your $1. But if you're a community like Springfield, you have different choices. And these are the choices that I have to deal with every day. So you have all these things that are competing for the next dollar. In fact, there's a lot more that's competing for the next dollar than this. And so as a community, we have to decide what's the biggest or the best investment. Where do we get the biggest bang for our buck? And I'm here to tell you the subheading of our presentation is Sewers Are Sexy. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go. So we're very fortunate in Springfield and the Ozarks because we have this tremendous advantage, and it's our environment. And our environment in Springfield drives a large portion of our economy. And so just think about the economic advantage that having clean water, clean air provides to our economy. But we also have challenges. And I read on the internet that 114% of people make up statistics. So you know it's true. But these are not made up statistics. And so we know we have our challenges, but in Springfield, we don't back away from our challenges. And these are just a couple of them. So 25% of the people living in Springfield are living below the poverty line. The free and reduced lunch rate at Springfield Public Schools is more than 50%, and a $32,000 median household income. Those are challenges, and we're working on those things. These are a couple of heat maps. We call them heat maps because I'm a visual learner. So if we looked at rows and columns of numbers, I probably couldn't tell you this story. But given that we have now mapped these out, red is bad, green is good, here are just a couple of the things that we're looking at. That's median household income. That's unemployment. Still, stop and tell me when you start to see a trend. Educational attainment. Mothers aged 15 to 19. Free and reduced lunch rate. The red is 80 to 100%, but look how much orange there is too. So we know in our community that we have some challenges. The thing that Springfield does really well, though, is we are not afraid to take them on. And so the Impacting Poverty Commission, the Community Listen Zone Blitz, these are initiatives within our community that are trying to address this tension point. So you have this tension point that is created by the environment being part of our economy and the fact that we don't have as many resources as we want. So remember, we've got this $1 to spend. Now we add one more, which is environmental mandates. And so why is environmental mandates on here? Well, remember, the economy is driven in part by our environment. Would Bass Pro be headquartered in Springfield, Missouri, if we didn't have clean water and clean air? And how many of you, show of hands, how many of you are vacationing in Flint, Michigan this year? And I feel bad for Flint. Can you imagine being the Chamber of Commerce of Flint, Michigan, or the Convention and Visitors Bureau and trying to attract people? So if we question the value of the environment to our economy, we ought to just think about that. This is a map of the upcoming environmental mandates. All of those are unfunded. And so since we're the government and we can't be trusted, we brought together a group of citizens and said, okay, what's that going to cost our community over the next 15 to 20 years? And they came up with the estimate, $1.6 billion. So $1.6 billion of unfunded environmental mandates. We know how important a clean environment is, and the environment is to our economy, and we don't have a lot of resources. So that creates this interesting tension point. We're not alone. While we estimate 1.6 billion, here's Kansas City and St. Louis's estimates and what they've agreed to with the Department of Natural Resources and EPA over the next few years just for stormwater and sewers. What's going to happen to those communities as they have to pay $4.5 billion and $4.7 billion? Do their communities become unaffordable? So what if you had a community that was willing to take a giant step back and take a fresh look at this and say, okay, maybe there's a different way of looking at this. Maybe there's a different way to connect these dots. Well, the community that's doing that is yours, and you may not realize it. So we have been invited, based on our unique approach to this, we've been invited to present to Congress. We have presented to various conferences around the region, the Department of Natural Resources, EPA, and even the ECOS Conference. The ECOS Conference is every DNR director in all 50 states. There were only 2 cities in the United States invited to make a presentation. We were one of the 2. And so to give you a little bit of a background and an idea of what we're talking about here, I'm going to invite somebody who really in the world of integrated planning and environmental planning is the new national rock star. It's our Assistant Director of Environmental Services, Aaron Kemper.
Well, I thought I was going to make it away with that dollar bill. That would be 99 cents more than my Christmas bonus this year. So, all right. So to give you just a little bit of background as to how we got here, you've got to go back about 40 years in American history. And so the mid-1970s brought about a lot of big federal legislation like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act. There were a lot of solid waste regulations like CERCLA and RCRA, et cetera. And this was a good thing, because if you were around in the mid-1970s, there was a lot going on across the nation in terms of our natural environment. And you may remember the Cuyahoga River catching fire, a lot of things like that. Even here in the Springfield area, there were a lot of concerns. And so as the next 40 years of environmental regulations progressed, we made a lot of headway. But we also ran into a lot of problems, because as we tend to do in the government world, everything kind of got developed within a little bit of a silo. And so here we are in 2017, and now the air quality people don't talk to the water quality people, and the drinking water people don't talk to the sanitary sewer people. And so there's this need to take a more holistic approach to planning for our environment, and that's where the integrated planning comes in. And so this holistic approach will examine our environmental resources in regards to air, water, and land resources. But it all comes down to trying to answer the one big question. If you only had $1, what is the most effective solution that you could implement to address the most pressing problems that matter the most to our community, and how do we do that in a way that is affordable to our citizens? And so it's all about prioritization, right? If you're going to make a good decision, you've got to make it based on a lot of different factors. And there's a good news story here. And the good news is there aren't really 2 sides to the environmental issue. By and large, everybody understands the need for a quality, natural environment. Now, we may disagree on the level of investment. You've got some folks on one end of the spectrum who feel that we currently overinvest in our natural environment. And you've got folks on the other end of the spectrum that feel that we don't spend nearly enough money on things like clean water and clean air. But there aren't any advocates for dirty water. There's no pro-smog alliance or anything like that out there. What we need to agree on is what is the correct level of investment, and how do we focus those investments in a way that will improve the environment the most. One little thing I'll note here too is that if you're a single mother living below the poverty line, while you may appreciate the need for pristine natural resources, you may not feel the urgency of these needs quite like you do for things like food. And so to kind of get into this prioritization, we prioritize environmental investments based on 4 key factors, and I'll go through those one at a time. The first one is evaluating our community's priorities. And so to this end, we instituted the Environmental Priorities Task Force with the mission to define our community's environmental priorities. And so we convened this task force a few years ago, and we asked them 2 big questions. We said, what are our most important resources? And where should we focus our efforts? And it's not that the average citizen understands a lot of these technical complexities enough to guide us in the right direction, but the basic question is, all things being equal, if there were 2 streams here in Springfield and everybody went fishing in one of them and nobody really went fishing in the other, water quality is important in both of those streams. But if you only had $1 to spend, if you're only going to maximize the spending of those finite resources, it should be invested on the stream where more people will see a benefit. So the second kind of lens that we look through as we prioritize is prioritizing the sources of pollution. And so here's where we ask the big question, if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate just one source of pollution, which one would it be? And so here's kind of an idea of some of the things that we're trying to protect. We're trying to protect our land resources. We're trying to protect aquatic life in the streams. We want to protect our ability to swim and boat and fish, and we want to protect our air quality. But there's something that stands in the way. And the roadblock to success is pollution. And so these are the chemicals and the things that get into our water and air and cause damage. But to make things even more complicated, those pollutions come from a lot of different pollution sources. And so things like sanitary sewer overflows can contribute bacteria and total solids and nutrients. Things like old abandoned gas stations and legacy sites can contribute petroleum, which impacts both the air and the water. And so how do you begin to untangle this mess? Well, we've developed what we call a multiple criteria decision analysis tool. We've worked with national experts to try to prioritize the top tier sources of pollution in our community so that we can focus our spending to address areas that are going to move the needle the most in environmental quality. All right, so once we've established what's the most important and where we want to focus our efforts, we've got to start talking about what we want to do. And there's a million solutions to a million different problems. And so here's one example. If you want to improve water quality, where do you get the most bang for your buck? The traditional approach would be to make improvements to your treatment plant, your wastewater treatment plant. And so these generally are multi-million-dollar improvements that cost a lot of money and take a lot of time and effort and make improvements in water quality. You can also invest in less traditional solutions like rain gardens. Well, that doesn't address sewer, it addresses the stormwater component. Both of these are viable solutions, but regulations are going to lead you to one answer. Integrated planning may lead you somewhere else when you ask the question, where do we get the most bang for our buck? And finally, we have to address financial capability of our community. We've got to look at how our decisions are going to impact low-income families, our region's ability to attract and retain businesses, and our ability to fund the other critical priorities, some of the things that Greg was talking about. But we feel like integrated planning will make the next 40 years of environmental regulations as successful as these 40 years. So we feel that the answer to integrated planning lies at the nexus of these 4 prioritization lenses, where we again ask the big question, if we only had $1 to spend, what is the most effective solution we could implement to address the most pressing problems that matter the most to our community and do it in a way that's affordable to our citizens? All right, so collaboration is key to all of this. If we've discovered anything with integrated planning, it's that if we'll just start talking to each other, we'll overcome a lot of different problems. So it's a little bit like the blind man and the elephant. When everybody makes assumptions based on what they think they know without seeing the big picture, then we don't really get anywhere. And so as an example of how integrated planning has worked internally, so picture, if you will, we've got regulations regarding clean water, clean air, drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, et cetera, and we get everybody into a room, and we sit down around a map, and we ask our stormwater quality professional, tell us a few things that you know, that some of the problems that you're trying to deal with. She says, all right, well, here is a map of a section of Springfield. We've got the watershed boundaries, we've got different streams. And here, I've got stream sample locations. And so this is where I go out and I collect samples of water and I have them analyzed in a lab, and it tells me things about overall water quality. And we say, well, what is it telling you? She says, well, occasionally I see high levels of heavy metals. Heavy metals can impact aquatic life. And occasionally I see high levels of bacteria. Bacteria gets in the water, somebody swims in the water, the person gets sick. We say, all right, well, what are you doing about those problems? We say, well, we've been around the watershed. The regulations don't really address this. We don't really know what to do. So we call our sanitary sewer people. Now, these guys, they know everything about the sanitary sewer system. They know where the pipes are located. They know what they're made out of. And so, for instance, these pipes here are made out of vitrified clay. Vitrified clay are those old red clay tile sewers, and they leak. When it rains, excess water gets into the sewer system and causes sanitary sewer overflows in other parts of the system. One other key piece of information that a lot of people don't know is that our sanitary sewer system has regulated dischargers. And so if you're a factory or some kind of an industry that puts things into the sewer system, we monitor you on a regular basis to make sure you don't put anything in that might hurt the treatment plants. And so what you see here is an industrial discharger that is a metal refinisher. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that there are areas of Springfield that are yet unsewered. And so what you see here are about 9 different houses. Houses have been there for 80 or 90 years. They've got septic tanks. A lot of those septic tanks are failing. We're working to get them hooked up to sewer. So we turn back to our water quality professional and say, so what does this tell you about the samples you're getting in the stream and the other watersheds? Say, well, it doesn't really tell us anything. So we call the geologists. Now the geologists, they get excited about this stuff. And they sit down and they tell us, Springfield, Missouri rests on a karst plateau. And so we've got solutional limestone, and you've got lots of sinkholes that the water goes in, and you've got springs that the water comes out. Well, what does that tell us about overall water quality? Not a whole lot. So we've got a lot of information, but we still haven't connected the dots. And about that time, Timmy, the intern from the back row, sticks his hand up and says, you know, I was looking through a file cabinet and I saw some stuff on dye tracing, literally connecting the dots. And so dye tracing is where you've got a bunch of Missouri State students, geology students, they go out and they put dye in the sinkholes and they monitor the springs in the area to see where the dye comes out. Well, now we're starting to get somewhere. Now our stormwater professional is looking at this and saying, wait a minute, are you telling me that you've got a metal refinisher that discharges into a leaky sewer pipe that runs through the bottom of a sinkhole that discharges to a spring upstream of the sampling location where I see levels of heavy metals? I think that's a conclusion. She says, oh, wait a minute. Are you telling me that you've got 8 or 9 failing septic tanks on the rim of a sinkhole that discharges to a spring upstream of an area where I see high levels of bacteria? Well, now we're starting to piece this stuff together, and because we've all talked, we didn't spend any more money, but because we all sat down in a room and talked, we're starting to find solutions to these environmental problems that regulations did not lead us to. And so you're probably asking yourself, doesn't everyone look at environmental regulations in this way? Nope. You know, the thing about innovative solutions is they start to sound a lot like common sense once you've heard them. It's a little bit like grape jelly in the little squeeze bottle. Anybody here with me? You know, you can go to the grocery store and you can buy that stuff now. And whenever you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you just squirt it on the bread. You don't have to dirty a knife or nothing. And for 35 years, I've been making peanut butter sandwiches and with a dirty knife, like a sucker. How did it take us this long to come up with something like that? And that's the reaction we get from integrated planning. It's like, wait a minute, you've just got to talk to each other? It can't be that easy, but it is that easy. And it's making an impact on our community. And so here's an example of sanitary sewer bills. So a lot of the cost to operate your sewer system is involved in the costs needed to comply with regulations with the Clean Water Act. And so communities that are using the traditional approach to comply with these regulations are going to be looking at $100 a month sewer bills over the next decade. Whereas Springfield, Missouri, who uses an integrated planning approach to try to optimize funding, our citizens are going to be paying somewhere like $30 a month for their sewer bill. Now, this is a big deal because this gives us a significant competitive advantage over other communities, and it also leaves a little bit of breathing room for us to address other environmental mandates that may be a little more critical. So, why should you care about this? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of reasons. First, a green reason. Our natural environment is the very thing that sustains us as a civilization. I mean, that's kind of a bold statement, but it's the food we eat, it's the air we breathe, it's the water we drink. It contributes more than anything to our overall quality of life here in the Ozarks. But if you don't like that, I also have a green reason why you should care. Because our natural environment drives such a huge portion of our economy through tourism, which directly and indirectly creates jobs and growth and contributes to our overall quality of life and public health. And so regardless of which shade of green you prefer, integrated planning benefits everybody. And because we're taking this holistic, big picture look at all of these investments, we're better able to address all of these other issues that our community faces that Greg talked about earlier. So I believe our time here is done today, and we will be available over here for questions afterward. But thank you all very much.